Miniature Market has thousands of board games at discounted prices. Click the direct link below to see all of those discounted games. Hello my friends! I cannot believe it's already time for Essen Spiel Fair. Oh my gosh, it's already fall time. Where did the year go? Gen Con flew by, Origins flew by, Gamma flew by, all this flew by, Dice Tower West. We're already at Essen here. I recently released a video for games that were releasing at Essen that I was anticipating, meaning ones I have not played. If you haven't seen that video yet, you can click there, look at the link in the description or up there, or just look for Game Boy Geek Essen videos. That was my top 10 most anticipated games. Those are ones that are for sale that I have not yet played and I'm anticipating. This list are games that would have been on my anticipated list, but I've had the pleasure of being able to play them before they're out. So this is, in my opinion, a more tried and true list because these are ones I've already played and they've been filtered through my filter and I think they're great and you can get them at Essen. And most of them have launched since Gen Con or maybe around Gen Con. It's the first sort of convention they're going to be at. So here we go.
Number 10.
Number 10 is a small little card game called Rebel Princess. In North America, it's from Bezier Games. In Europe, I think it's a few different publishers. Rebel Princess essentially is the old-fashioned trick-taking game called Hearts that you used to be able to play on the Windows 3.1 systems. It was one of the first network games you could play with each other. It's basically a trick-taking game, basically very much like Hearts, where you're taking tricks, but you're trying to avoid certain suits and specific cards because you don't want points in the game. This takes that idea and puts a theme to it, puts some nice art to it. Now you're trying to avoid the princes and you're trying to avoid the frog, which is the worst card in the game. But there's two big twists here. One is each player is going to get a card that's going to be an ability that you get to use throughout the game. You can use it once per round and it's going to allow you to break the rules of the game. But also each round there's going to be a different event that also changes how that round is played. So think of Hearts, basic trick-taking game, special abilities per person, special abilities per round. Sounds very simple, right? But those two twists really make it feel very different from Hearts, but yet still feeling familiar. Now, if you like trick-taking games and old classic ones, but you want some twists, Rebel Princess is it.
Number 9.
The next one is a game from Freedom of Freeze called Free Ride USA. This is a few years ago he came out with Free Ride, and that was a Europe version. This is now the USA version. I recently just reviewed that, so if you want to see more about this, you can check my channel for that review. Just in the last few weeks I reviewed it. It's basically a very streamlined train game that takes 60-ish minutes to play. Very streamlined. You're building track, you're moving your trains, you're going to cities that you need to get to, and you basically pick up and deliver, but you're trying to move. And as the game goes on, you can carry more routes, you can move further, but it's very streamlined. But the cool twist here is you're building train tracks. You can use your own for free. If you use somebody else's, you've got to pay them a coin, which essentially is 3 points. I'm giving up 3 points, giving you 3 points. But now that I've used your train rides, it becomes state run and anybody can use it for free, hence the name Free Ride. So you're really interesting timing as to when you use your routes, when you use other routes, when you wait for other people to use other people's routes so you can use them for free. All while trying to race around and get things with a very streamlined train game, Free Ride USA.
Number 8.
This next one still isn't out here, King of Tokyo Duel. This is a two-player version standalone version of a very popular game, King of Tokyo. I had a chance to play this at Gen Con at a press event. It's a two-player tug-of-war. If you like King of Tokyo, Rock'em Sock'em Robots, King of the Hill, this has a lot of that in it, but it also is very different because it's basically like a tug-of-war in different ways. You're trying to tug the points towards you. You're trying to tug health and things like that. So you're basically tugging of war on different tracks. But it's similar to King of Tokyo. You're rolling dice, re-rolling up to 2 more times. You're trying to hit them. You're trying to gain points. You're also trying to gain cards. There's lots of cards in here. If you don't buy a card, you actually get energy. So you actually will go through cards a little bit faster than you normally would. Some of these cards give you tokens that you could put on some of the tracks. That as you move there, you activate special abilities. That's probably the most clever twist in this. But if you like King of Tokyo and you like dual two-player games, this is kind of a no-brainer. Check out King of Tokyo Duel.
Number 7.
This next one I just reviewed last week, so check my channel for this. It's called The Gang. This is as if the game The Mind and Texas Hold'em Poker had a baby. It's basically cooperative poker, where everyone's going to be dealt 2 pocket cards, you're looking at them, and everyone's trying to decide who has the best hand. And you do this by not talking about what's in your hand, but just kind of taking a token that says, hey, I have the best, I have the second best, I have the third best. And then the flop comes out and you're doing it again. And then another card comes out, the river, and things like that. So basically you go through the different stages of a poker hand in Texas Hold'em, and in between each time you get new information, you're basically saying whether you have where are you in the hand-wise. You can't say anything about your hand, but you're trying to feel other people out. That's why it's like the mind, because it's very above the table, very trying to like time things, how fast are they reaching for that. And you're looking at what cards are out there. You're looking at whether their strength, what they thought it was earlier, what's come out since then. Oh, maybe they've got a flush now. That's why they went from like nothing to having something great. Things like that. It's a really clever game. It takes 10 minutes to play. There's an advanced variant that's really good. If you like partyish style games and you like the mind, or you like poker, or you like both of them, this is kind of like a no-brainer. It's a big hit, The Gang.
Number 6.
This next one is called Flower Fields. This is from Horrible Guild. I got a chance to play this with the designer the publisher at Gen Con. This game is interesting because it has a lot of similarities to, say, Patchwork, where the way you grab things and get different flowers and such is like that way, where you're grabbing something ahead of you and you're placing it on your board, but you're trying to fill in rows, you're trying to fill in columns, you're trying to get things for endgame scoring. There's a lot of interesting things as to how things work. If you liked Patchwork, but you're like, oh, I wanted something that could play up to 4 players, and I wanted something that was maybe a little bit longer, a little bit meatier, that's what this is. It has a lot of things to think about, even though it's very simple mechanically. It's got some interesting, more deeper aspects, I'd say, than Patchwork, but it was definitely probably inspired by Patchwork. So if you like Patchwork and you want something a little bit longer, maybe 30 minutes-ish, plays more players, and has a little bit more depth, I think Flower Fields is going to be right up your alley.
Number 5.
Next one is Bomb Busters. This is from Essen Spiel. This is a cooperative game, similar to some games like maybe even The Crew, but you're not playing cards. You're basically trying to deduce what other players have in front of them. You're working together. You're basically trying to cut wires that are blue. You don't want to cut yellow ones. You don't want to cut red ones. And you're basically giving up information about that, and you're giving people information about where your wires are some of the time, and you're cutting other people's wires based upon that information that you've been given. There's also different equipment and different cards you can get that allow you to break the rules of the game. This also is sort of a campaign-ish game where you're going to play different levels, and the different levels, they get harder as they go on, they get more difficult, there's little more rules, there's some more cards and abilities that come in. And you don't have to go through the whole campaign. You can just be like, hey, I like this level a lot, let's just play this one. But it's interesting, it's 2 to 4 players, cooperative, deductive. It's a different style game. You gotta like deduction a little bit, you gotta like cooperative games. But if you like cooperative deduction games like The Crew, but you wanna try something that's not just trick taking and has some other elements to it, Bomb Busters is a really unique one I think you should check out.
Number 4.
This next one is a 2-player card game called Compile. This is a fantastic little game. I recently reviewed this. Check it out on my channel. It's got a cool theme where you're both coders. You're trying to compile three protocols first, essentially 3 rows of cards or columns of cards. And you're playing, and at the beginning of the game, you get to draft which 3 protocols you're playing with. And each of those come with a little set of cards, like 6 cards maybe. And each of those cards have different abilities. So each stack of decks has like their own little strategy, if you will. And kind of like Smash Up, you're drafting 3 of these, putting them together in one big deck, and now you have like different comboing strategies with each other. That alone is awesome. Then you're simply just playing a card, doing abilities on that card, but the cards have numbers and you're trying to get up to 10. If at the beginning of your turn you're at 10, you can compile, flip that row's compile card over. The first one to flip 3 of their compiled programs wins. But there's a lot of tactical things. There are a lot of abilities you can do. You can only affect cards that are the last ones played in each of the columns. You're flipping cards over. You're reactivating abilities. For as light as this is, sometimes there's ongoing abilities. Sometimes there's abilities that happen, later. There's a lot of like little things here for a game that's simply like play a card face up or face down in one of your 3 rows. That's it. But there's a ton of tactics here, a ton of replayability. There's already a little expansion, Auxiliary 1. I highly recommend you get that. It gets you 3 more protocols. If you like 2-player sort of tug-of-war card games, this one is fantastic. Compile.
Number 3.
This next one was my number 1 most anticipated game for Gen Con, and now it's my number 2 best game that third best game at Essen. And so this one is called Chronologic. This is a deduction game co-designed by the same person that brought us Turing Machine years ago. If you like that crunchy sort of deduction game, you're gonna like this. This deduction game is a little different from others. It's interesting that the way it works is you're trying to like follow people around a map. So it's not just filling out a logic puzzle or a logic spreadsheet. You're actually using spatial awareness as to, hey, this person was in this room last round or last hour. They can't go further than one room away the hour before or the hour after. And so you're using that spatial aspect and knowing about how many people were in this room, who was in this room, and you're trying to figure it out. Now, this is a scenario-based game. There's 15 scenarios in here. They're slightly replayable if you haven't played it in a while and you sort of randomize it and you don't know which one you're playing. They get harder, and there's 3 big blocks of each one has 5 cases. And each of the big blocks or scenarios has different aspects of what you're trying to solve, how you solve them, but then there's like 5 levels of that. And so there's 15 total sort of games in here, but it's only, I think it was like $24 American dollars. So even if you just played each one once, 15, you get your money's worth. It's a great little deduction game. It takes like 15 minutes each scenario, maybe 20 tops. And it's interesting. If you like awkward guests, you'll like this. The whole spatial aspect of how people move. I like it better than awkward guests because it doesn't have that fiddly little let's trade cards and then I get a card that I already had thing that I did not like. The way you get information here is much more streamlined and much more interesting than an awkward guess, but it has a lot of similarities to it. So if you like deduction games, Chronologic, check it out.
Number 2.
The next one is a small little card game that has really wowed us. It's called Rainbow. It's in All Play's tiny little box series they've just started coming out with. This is sort of like a ladder climbing game. I've reviewed this, so check out my channel for a full review. But it's so interesting because you're playing cards, and in a ladder climbing game, you're trying to have the most cards out there, which you're still trying to have here. You're trying to have the most cards. Why? Because the one that has played the best hand gets the first choice of which scoring cards are available. They range from 1 to 6. However, the cards that you play during the round become the scoring cards for next round. So all the cards people played, those are the ones you're fighting for. And they can be paired up. So you can score anywhere from like 1 point to 12 points each round, because at most you could put 2 cards together and the highest card is 6. Now the interesting thing is, as you're playing this, you're trying to sort of slot yourself in, because like if you've ever played For Sale, there might be 2 really high numbers that you're trying to win and a bunch of low numbers. And it's like, well, if I'm not going to go all the way in, I might as well just throw nothing, right? So then you just throw nothing and you get something decent. And the distribution of what comes out really makes you change as to when you're going to go forward. There's also a really interesting way of how the game ends with the timing. It's really great. If you like ladder climbing games and you like that you don't always have to beat the person to still score things and try to slot in where you think you can still get good points, it's a quick, clever little game. It's really wowed us. Rainbow.
Number 1.
All right, so my number 1. Now, let me just do a preface here, is that I don't like to put games on multiple lists. And so going into Gen Con, I had a list that was my top 10 games I already played. And the number 1 game for that was Intent to Kill from Hobby World. They're from Russia. And I've done a full review of Intent to Kill. Go look that up. I kind of still wanted to put this as my number 1 game I played for Essen. However, I already put it on the Gen Con list. So for me, that kind of like, I can't put it on this list too. But I do want to say, because people are going to ask, well, what about Intent to Kill? I thought you really liked it. I do really like it. It would have been number 1 here, but I already put it on my top 10 Gen Con games list. So it's not going to get on this list. So for those that don't know, go check out Intent to Kill. It's a deductive cat and mouse. One's the killer, one's the investigator, trying to figure each other out. Interesting play, cat and mouse, bluffing, double bluffing. You can play it up to 4 players. I still think it's best with 2. Check out my review for Intent to Kill. It's an amazing game. For Essen now, since that's not available in my little rules here, number 1 game here is Intarsia. This is a game from Michael Kiesling, the one who did Azul. Now this game actually has a decent amount of similarities to Azul, but is absolutely very different at the same time. In this game, you're building your own sort of tableau. You're building parquet floors and a cafe. And you're going to be using cards, and you're going to be playing cards of certain colors in order to build the first part, second, third, or fourth part of the parquet. And it takes more cards. Level 1 is 1 card, level 2 is 2 cards, and so on and so forth. So you're building up to 3 different levels, and you're putting a table there. It's very interesting because as you play, the more cards you play of a color, and you get to build those, the more cards you get to draw of different colors to set yourself up for a future turn. So it's a lot of comboing and looping and linking things together of different colors. But the twist is that once you're building these, you're racing for these gold tiles. Now there's only a limited amount of these gold tiles. In a 2-player game, there's only one of everything. The 3 or 4-player game is a different amount of them. And you're trying to get them, but you're trying to get them the fastest, even a multiplayer game, because the faster you get there, the more points they're worth. The other thing is, like in Azul, once you score something, a lot of times, and you score things around it, you're gonna score like combo scoring. In this, each of the different types of tiles are in a column with a tool on it. And every time you get something of a tool that you've already scored, not only do you score the one you just finished, you score everything else that you had already gotten from that tool. So you've got sort of combo scoring with abstract nature of building things, building out on your board, looking at what other players are doing, and comboing together different card colors together. It's hard to explain. Watch my full review of this. I've done it in Tarja. If you liked Azul, but you wanted something maybe even a little crunchier, but also a little bit, definitely less mean, because you can't really screw people over on purpose like you can in Azul by sticking them with a bunch of stuff that they can't hold. It can be a little mean where you are shooting for things, but you have to have the right things in order to get the tile, and you can see what everyone has. So I think it's less mean, more crunchy than Azul. That's what I think. Similar, but very different in Tarja. All right, there's my top 10 games that I've already played that are amazing that you should go check out at Essen. If you've missed my other Essen video, top 10 most anticipated games, go back to my channel and check that out. And subscribe and like if you can. It's the Game Boy Geek, breaking down barriers, growing relations to board games, and helping you on the next one you love.
Game Toppers upgrades every game you play, and their 4.5 Kickstarter introduced the new Galactic Minecraft and Watson Game Toppers with interchangeable rail inlays, as well as new game mats, miniature gaming terrain packs, leg kit options, dining covers, accessories, and amazing package deals. The campaign recently ended, but it's not too late to pledge late at GameToppersLLC.com.